Hello, corporate badasses. Happy Friday. I am coming to you with a little bit of a cheeky training on trusting in yourself as we wrap up this next set of the executive reboot. And I'm just going to cut right to the chase that things don't ever get easier. And was such a valuable lesson for me to learn. I always felt like, um, in terms of my emotional state, in terms of managing my emotions and trusting my ability, trusting in myself, I felt like at some point it was going to get easier, that I was going to all of a sudden have control over my emotions. I was never going to overstep. I was never going to feel anxious or nervous, or I was never going to, I would get to the point where I just felt really confident, very grounded, and really amazing about all my abilities. And if you look at other leaders that you really admire, that's what you think their life is like, right? That it's just easy for them and it's not for me. And this idea of wanting things to be easier, thinking that someday it will be easier, actually keeps you very stuck, because it's actually not true. It never gets easier. And for me, when I was able to really embrace that, just like opened up a world of possibility. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So life is 50-50. This is a quote from Brooke Castillo, founder of the Life Coach School. And I talked about this in the Managing Your Emotions module. And if we really know that life is 50-50, 50% good, 50% bad, always, always, then we have a choice. We have a choice to lean in, a choice to challenge ourselves, a choice to go for more, a choice to raise our hands. And I think that choice is everything. And that's the choice that I keep coming back to every single day. And I make a choice. And what I'm really making the choice to do is to stay inspired. And so that's the actual action that I'm going to give you for this particular training, is that it's your job to stay an inspiration. And I'll give you a couple of ideas of how you can do that and how you can continue to stay inspired. But when I say that it doesn't get any easier, I actually mean that it also gets harder. So what I mean by that is, and you've probably noticed this, right? Like before you joined executive ahead of time, you're just sort of going along with your career, and it's like, you do your job, and for the most part you're kind of just like at this like sort of place, and maybe you're happy some days, maybe you're not. And then, promotion time comes, and then you don't get promoted, or maybe you do, but you feel uncomfortable for that day, and then you kind of like go back to your work and you do your work again, right? So you're sort of just living in this temperate state. And then you join executive ahead of time, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to go for more, I'm going to ask for feedback. And then I ask for feedback and I get feedback that things aren't going well, or I start putting myself out there and I get told immediately that I'm too ambitious. And then you're sort of wondering, why am I doing this? Like, why am I subjecting myself to this misery? Right? It can feel that heavy sometimes. And I just want to acknowledge that, because you really need to know that this is a choice, your choice to put yourself out there, your choice. We don't have to have 15-minute ally meetings to do our jobs, right? Especially at the levels that you guys are at. But there are a lot of people who are at the vice president or senior vice president level who are not having 15-minute ally meetings, right? And they're doing their job okay. The 15-minute ally meetings are a process for expansion, a process to challenge ourselves, to connect with leadership. There are plenty of VPs and C-suite executives that are completely in the weeds. We have had CTOs join this group because they were completely in the weeds and swamped, right? You get your dream job and it sucks because you can't manage yourself, right? So that is happening all over. And you are actually making the choice to kind of lean in, to do something more, to have bigger connections, which is inevitably going to bring up a bigger layer of fear, a bigger layer of uncertainty, more change, more shifting. And so what that's going to bring up is more emotion. You're starting to see your patterns. You're like, oh, I'm creating my own results. Like the reason that I didn't get promoted is because I didn't have proactive conversations all along the way. And at that point, we have another choice to make. We can either make that mean something about our ability, right? We can not trust ourselves, or we can say, oh, yeah, I am the problem, but I'm also the solution. And that's where the inspiration comes in. It is our job to proactively stay in inspiration. So at the same time that we're having meetings with executives and getting feedback, and sometimes that feedback might be hard to hear or upsetting or frustrating, we're also staying inspired by meeting with executives that inspire us, that lift us up, that show us our real value, that shine a mirror on our abilities, that give us hope for what is possible in our own career. We're staying in inspiration by joining groups like this so that we can start literally. So you're inspired not just because I'm here to pump you up and to make you feel better, but because I'm giving you practical tools to actually shift, right? So if you are both the problem and the solution, I'm giving you the solution so that you can start to pull yourself out of this muck, right? Whatever that might be. So if, waiting until your promotion or until your performance review doesn't actually lead to a promotion, or being in the weeds all of the time is just getting you reinforcement that you're a really great hard worker, really great subject matter expert, but you're not able to transition into executive leadership, you start to shift your communication, you're going to be able to open up that world. But all along the way, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And the biggest thing that I start to do now when I feel uncomfortable, so my old way was I make a bold move, something happens, and I'm like, oh, I'm so, it was funny because even if I would make a bold move in the past, and you might have experienced this, and it turned out really well, the self-doubt of sustaining that would also creep in, right? Like I'd be like, like let's say you did have a conversation with your CFO and it went amazing, and your CFO is like, you're brilliant, and she's like giving you all this positive reinforcement, and you're just like, oh my God, I got this. And then you go back to yourself, and then the self-doubt creeps in. You're like, oh, well, maybe that was just a one-time thing, or nothing's really going to come of this, or who knows, right? Like, and so I would just, even if something good would happen, I would still kind of return to myself and, be anxious. And now when I do something bold, challenge myself, take a different action, whatever that might be, and I feel uncomfortable about it, and I start to feel nervous or anxious, I actually tell myself that I am on to something big, right? I've quoted Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap, in here before. I gave it away last week, and he talks about that upper limit, right? And so when you really think about it, like I'm hitting that upper limit, that means this is just the beginning. There's something else on the other side. When you really just sort of say, oh, maybe I feel anxious because I'm about to do something pretty freaking amazing, right? Maybe I feel nervous to schedule a meeting with my boss's boss's boss because I know that meeting matters. Whereas the meeting that's really easy to schedule, I don't feel so nervous, because it's like, oh, that's a good meeting. It'll be fine, right? And so when we start to feel that tinge of fear pop up, it's usually because we're onto something. That this situation, this big move that we're about to make, this challenge that we're about to do, this change, this shift is big, and it matters. So if life is 50-50 and we're always going to have good and we're always going to have bad, it doesn't matter. There's not a day that all of a sudden we just like everything becomes easy. Then what is there? And what it is this that I'm describing. That the nervousness, the pain, the fear, the anxiousness, whatever that might be that comes up for us when we start to do something different, we move through it faster. We notice it, right? There's less self-perpetuating anxiety that we add on top of it. We don't mire ourselves in it. And the way that we don't mire ourselves in it is we go out and we seek inspiration. We are putting ourselves in front of people that lift us up rather than pull us down. We proactively seek feedback, not just because we don't want to listen to the bad feedback, right? We want to get the actionable, inspirational, very targeted feedback, the people who really do have our back, right? That their feedback, even if it's negative, even if it's hard to hear, it's constructive because it actually helps us, right? We need to hear it. Everything that I say in executive ahead of time, 50% of the time it probably doesn't feel good, right? Like it's not like I'm like, oh, you're doing great, just keep doing it. Who cares if they say you're aggressive, right? Like it's like, no, right? We're analyzing why, and then we're figuring out what we're going to do differently. So that's the work that we're doing in executive ahead of time. We're keeping each other inspired by showing us, by showing each other, by showing ourselves that there is another way, that there is a way through, that yes, maybe what we're doing isn't working, but now I know what to do instead. And even if it feels uncomfortable, I'm going to keep pushing through. I'm going to go to that next level and that next level and that next level. So as we wrap up our modules on trust in yourself, our time together on trust in yourself, and move into trusting into your executive leadership team, I really want you to have grace, love, honor the work that you're doing, because it really is a big deal and it's really needed. And it does get easier in the sense that you're able to breathe through it, slow down, not add multiple layers of anxiety on top of your suffering, and reach for more. And it's that slow expansion that I talked about in the other in the other live that I did, where we start to expand our circle, right? Our circle, our comfort zone. We start to expand that, and so it gets bigger and bigger, and it can hold more and more and more. All right, my friends, I'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye.